the session. Off you go, David.
Thank you very much, Bart. So, good morning, everybody. I'm David Brunelleschi, and I'm a manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers Advisory based in Rome, Italy. And we're one of the 16 organizations part of the ESPRESSO Consortium. And as PricewaterhouseCoopers, we are on board the ESPRESSO journey, basically to take care of the impact assessment activities, but also to focus on the funding, financing, and procurement approaches which characterize smart city solutions. And properly in relation to this second aspect, I am pleased to share with you all today some insights from a recently completed analysis, which will soon be published and made available on our ESPRESSO website. So therefore, I invite you all to go and have a look to the report once it will be made available on our web portal. I'll give you the web link at the end of this brief presentation in order to find there more insights, details, because I don't want to go too much in details this morning. I would like to have more a nice chat with you all. So for any more information, please go back to the website and to the report as soon as it will be available. Now, moving on. Let's see if I can get my slides going. Should have changed. As mentioned, the objective of this recently concluded work stream was to identify the most relevant funding, financing, and procurement models in the smart city domain. So in order to do so, we went to see a number of real examples of successful smart city solutions. So to understand what worked well there. Starting point of our analysis was to verify the most relevant issues characterizing each case study. Also in coherence with what had been identified other work carried out in the context of ESPRESSO. And I'm referring particularly to the Smart City Strategic Growth Map, which is deliverable 5.1 and which is already available, which is already available on our website. Well, what came out was that the most common elements during the driving, what are the typical questions, like the if, the when, the how much, the what questions when it comes to smart city solutions, are typically the 8 issues which are presented here in this figure. So these should be actually the questions which we should be asking ourselves when drawing city investment roadmaps in the smart city domain. So basically, will the smart city solution I'm thinking about generate, assure a return on investment? What value is the smart city solution actually generating? Is this solution actually better than another option I could take into consideration? So these 8 points here, represented very schematically, are probably the most recurrent elements that we actually crossed when going across all these cases that we analyzed. And we really think these should be the starting point when you're thinking about implementing a smart city solution and looking for resources to finance it. Furthermore, while looking at different cities which were trying to implement technological-based solutions, we also came up with a maturity journey scheme of the towns, where most of the case studies that we identified in our analysis actually refer to cities which basically are standing in the middle here of this figure you see now on your screens. They're actually, the most of them were trying to move from the developing stage actually to the become more to the proactive stage, from, let's say, in order to become real true smart cities. So it was very rare to find examples of cities that we could actually define and consider as properly smart cities, while common element that came out from our analysis is that basically the cities characterized in our analysis, so talking about EU major cities, are positioned in the middle of this maturity journey and are trying to move to the right part, trying to get smarter and smarter, implementing those elements that you see here represented. So as mentioned, we focused on over 15 different cases of smart city solutions while carrying out this analysis. And I thought it would have been interesting to try to point out the main kind of business models of smart city projects we found going through this analysis. And you can see them here in this slide now on your screens. Basically, there are three kinds of business models, business cases that came out from our analysis. The first kind are the research and development based projects, those that are characterized by basically implementing a pilot, testing it, and if it works, selling it by replicating it entirely or partially. This was a very common kind of experience we came across. The second major trend, the second major business case we identified through the analysis are the real estate-based smart city solutions, because we found out that these smart city solutions are often linked to refurbishment of city areas. So in this case, the business model is substantiated by the increased cost of the property, which has been enhanced by implementing ICT-driven technologies. And finally, what is typical of the smart city domain is, of course, the public utility dimension. Another common business case of smart city solutions is basically public utility. So it is quite often to come across smart city solutions that are not meant to generate revenues. They are not necessarily meant and developed to create return on investment, but they are generating innovation in public services. So the costs are bared by the public authorities, so basically the taxpayers, because the final objective is basically assuring public utility. So these are the three main, let's say, business models, business cases we found in going through several different examples of smart cities implemented throughout Europe. Now, getting to the core of our talk of this morning, let me just spend a minute on defining the key concepts of funding, financing, and procurement. Well, basically, funding is the long-term cash inflow to pay for the implementation of a project. It represents the payment of benefits from those that primarily benefit from the project, and it does not imply any repayment. Typical examples of sources of funding include governmental bodies, as well as also the corporate sector. Let's think of social responsibility programs. While financing instead is a temporary provision of a cash flow that is expected to be paid back at a specific point of time. Sources of financing may be multiple, such as bank loans from the commercial banking institutions, or also governmental banks, or development banks, such as the European Investment Bank, which we found to be very active also in the smart city domain. Finally, procurement. We know that products and services for smart cities should be supported by innovative funding and financial schemes, but also by more sustainable procurement criteria. The public sector is becoming more and more a key player in driving investment in the smart city domain through public procurement. The complex management of social and economic aspects of urban systems needs financial commitments often far beyond the available public finance. For this reason, new tools of engagement between public and private investors are being defined, and this leads to a revision of the public body's role, which is changing from customer into a facilitator. Well, in this framework, innovative procurement plays a central role as a strategic enabler to introduce new ways of finance and negotiation between public bodies and private investors. So actually, yeah, we found that procurement is a very important tool in order to foster and in order to implement smart city solutions. Now, moving ahead, just to give an overall picture of what we found, we tried to spot some recurrent paths across different smart city projects when it comes to funding and financing them. And basically, what we did is we divide them by their size, looking basically at their budget. So we considered small-scale projects, which are those which have kind of relatively small overall budgets, let's say under 100,000 euros. Medium-sized projects, those from 100,000 up to 1 million, and the large-scale projects, usually with budgets over 1 million euro in average. What came out is that there are some kinds of financing instruments, financing tools that are more indicated for a small-scale project. Talking about, for example, you can see here crowdfunding, you can see here venture philanthropy. These are financial tools which typically apply to small-scale projects. While large-scale projects, on the other hand, are those which can more easily try to go for financial products provided by commercial banks, bond financing, solutions like this, because usually they involve major companies which blend, let's say, the smart city component of the solutions with other businesses, like real estate. As you can see here, a common trend anyway, despite the size of the smart city solutions, of the smart city project, is the European, the national funding dimension, which, despite, as I was saying, the size of the solution, always may apply. So they come to be a quite recurrent source of resources. And for this, I am going to very briefly focus on the EU context concerning funding and financing options. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because there are many sources available online where to find detailed information of all those many EU funding and financing instruments available. And as I was mentioning at the beginning, please go give a look to the report once it will be made available on the ESPRESSO website for further details also on this. But anyway, I think it is important just to give some quick insights on what is out there for funding these smart city solutions. So, referring to the EU context, it's probably comes natural to distinguish immediately between the European structural investment funds and the other main European funding programs. Concerning the first ones, there are in particular 3 of these programs and funds. I'm talking about the Cohesion Fund, the European Regional Development Fund, and the European Social Fund, which are those that mostly apply to smart city solutions because they are offering opportunities for research and development, ICT, and infrastructure development. And as we all know, these funds are managed by intermediaries, which are the member states, so they are not directly provided by EU institutions. Anyway, if we consider these 3 funds I just mentioned concerning the European Structural Investment Funds here, there's an overall potentially available value of more than 330 billion euros across whole European Union to fund smart city solutions. While moving to the right and looking at the main European funding programs, which, on the other hand, are usually directly managed by EU institutions, here there's another wide range of opportunities for funding smart city solutions, smart city projects. And also here, there are over 160 billion overall euro available to fund smart city solutions. And if we look at this list, probably half of this budget comes from Horizon 2020. We all know this framework program, which is making available more or less 80 billion for funding research and innovation projects focusing on smart cities. And among these also our ESPRESSO project, for which we are all here today. Moving on to the financing options for smart city projects, again in the EU context. Well, let me just do a little introduction here that financial instruments compared to funding, to grants, attract more private and public resources to complement the initial public funding and can be reinvested over several cycles. Main financing options are the financial products supported by public resources, like those ones you see here in the slide, the financial products provided by commercial banks, and the financial products supported by specifically development banks, like for example the European Investment Bank or all the national development banks. Let me just spend 1 second pointing out the two financing instruments on the right of this slide here. I'm referring to the co-investment facility and the urban development fund. These are probably the most recent, the newest financing instruments which have been just released by the European institutions. And the co-investment facility is actually focusing mainly on startups and SMEs, while the urban development fund is actually going towards infrastructure project, public transport, energy efficient, and generally regeneration of urban areas. Both of these operate through a financial intermediary, so each member state will be responsible of putting up, of finding and habilitating this intermediary, financial intermediary, which will make available these resources to whoever wants to go and invest and try to look for resources to finance their smart city projects. So these are probably the most interesting, the newest ones, while the ones on the left, the European Funds for Strategic Investments and the Innofin, have been going on already for quite a while, so they're already quite known, and as the others, they are again financing options which operate through financial intermediaries. Another aspect I wanted to focus on is sustainability of smart city solutions. Well, so many pilots which we came across, pilots that didn't have any continuation. This was kind of a common trend in our analysis. We found many smart city initiatives that started and then basically after a relatively short period of time ended because, let's say, the grant or the initial funding support ended, and that solution did not foresee any sustainability scheme, did not foresee any instrument to keep on surviving. So there's many examples, let's say, of failures. I don't want to really call them failures, but of pilots which have not continued to generate their effects, of projects which have ended up after their official final date. So something that we came across to, and which I think is equally important to the where do I get the resources, is how do I assure that once I get the money, the solution I have put up keeps on working and is sustainable. So what we found out here is that there should be actually an evolution from traditional operating models of smart city solutions, which were basically structured in a silo approach, perhaps there was the solution focusing just on transport, there was the solution focusing just on energy, and that's it, towards the evolution should be a new operating model which drives innovation and collaboration across these vertical silos involving different stakeholders. So actually this is the key element which is making the difference, which is making some smart city solutions succeed and some others end after their pilot stage. Is the thinking already at the beginning a new kind of operating model which will assure its sustainability. And the key components of this new integrated operating model which we spotted are those listed here in the box here in the slide. And basically investing in smart data and manage it as an asset, setting out flexible budgets, establishing citywide governance, and then I'll skip right to the end because it's kind of an interesting point here for our ESPRESSO project, implementing standards to measure the performance of city services. Well, here we have an example of an ISO standard, the 37120, which establishes some methodologies for implementing indicators and is applicable basically to any city which wants to measure its performance in a comparable manner. And I invite you to go give a look to the standard because it has also specific indicators dedicated to financial sustainability and to financial solidness of each city. So this is quite an interesting insight, and also here for further details, please refer also to the report once it will be available on the ESPRESSO website. And then, moving now to procurement, it is clear that cities have an enormous opportunity to stimulate innovation by using procurement, as I was saying before. However, since smart city projects are by definition multi-component, their procurement is really complex. This may be due by the legislation, by limits of the municipal authority's ability to interact with the private sector, and so on. Anyway, the fact is that these issues have created barriers to new players who are accessing this smart city solution market. So, combined with the need for integrated and systemic solutions, such as those of smart cities, this is actually a major challenge for local authorities, which have traditionally developed response, as I was mentioning before, through a silo approach. Looking here, what we have listed on this slide are some examples of innovative approaches to procurement, because these are those that came out to be the most suited to procure smart city solutions. Now, just to be clear, they are not the only way to procure smart city solutions. We have found cases of smart city solutions procured through traditional means, for traditional approaches of procurement. For example, let's say the Valencia in Spain smart city platform, which has been put up through a standard regular procurement approach. Anyway, we have found that the majority of these smart city projects are being procured using innovative approaches to procurement. So just to go quickly through them, first we can see there the preliminary market consultation, which is not really a procurement approach. It's rather just a way to investigate, to acquire some knowledge if the market has something already available in the direction. So it's rather a preliminary consultation. It's not already procuring, it's just scoping out the environment. And then moving to those below, we have the pre-commercial procurement. I'm sure everybody has heard about it, and it is used when research and development services are needed, as well as prototyping a product, but the innovative products and services do not need to be acquired then on a commercial scale, because if that is the case, that apart from doing research, you also then need to buy that product or that service, you would rather go for an innovation partnership, which is the last one listed here on the slide. While the other two actually do not foresee specifically research and development services. So it's actually developing directly a product or a service. And the difference between the other two, and I'm talking about the competitive dialogue and the competitive procedure with negotiation, is basically specification of the end product or of the service to be procured can actually be developed. If a specification can already be developed, then you will go for a competitive procedure with negotiation. In case you still have not a clear idea of what you're looking for, then the most common solution that we found is going through the competitive dialogue. And of course, also here, I'm sorry to repeat myself, but further information on each kind of these procurement approaches are available on the document, soon available online. Now, just as a last piece of information, I wanted to point out and share with you those key success factors which we most often came across analyzing several case studies through this recently concluded analysis. Well, basically, those success factors that characterize those smart city solutions which actually worked and which actually are currently working today is that it is important to have a smart city vision in place. This is an important factor which characterized many of the successful solutions we identified. Furthermore, cooperation and the importance of public-private partnerships. There must be dialogue among institutions, private entities, citizens. And citizens and final users, this involvement, of course, must be regulated, must be commensurated to their involvement, to the incentives they receive. So, of course, the more the final users will be involved in the solution, the most they have to be involved in developing and putting up the solution, implementing it. This will assure that then the solution will work. And finally, the smart city solution really has to respond to needs of the society. We came across quite a number of examples of cases which actually seem to be put up just to prototype, to experiment something, but they were not actually answering to needs of the society, and that is probably the reason which they have not continued, they have not survived. So, well, I hope that through this brief chat I had the chance to share some interesting and potential useful insights, and as I said at the beginning, if you manage, please go give a look at the report once it will be uploaded online for further details. For example, we have included there also some operational guidelines for public bodies which are about to procure a smart city solution. So that could be useful for any of you who are public sector representatives. On my side, well, I think it is all for today. And if there are any questions, I'll be pleased to try to answer them. And let me thank you all for your attention.
Thank you so much, David, for your energetic presentation. Always good to listen to you. So let's open up the floor for questions. Don't be shy. Well, looks like you were crystal clear. That's good. So thanks everyone for joining today's webinar, and hopefully stay tuned for more webinars to come. Thank you everyone for joining, and talk to you soon.